For a moment, nothing happened, and somehow that made it worse. 3 glasses sat between us untouched, 3 people pretending they didn't feel the same pull tightening the room. One look, one pause too long, and suddenly, restraint felt like a lie we'd all agreed to tell, because sometimes the most dangerous thing isn't what you do, it's what you almost allow. And if you've ever felt that moment, when silence presses harder than words, when a single breath could tilt the night in a direction you'll never undo, then stay with me. Because this isn't a confession, it's the story of how hesitation quietly gave way. Before I go any further, let me say this. What unfolds next isn't reckless fantasy or a guilty indulgence. It's that quiet pivot, where you realize the line you swore you'd never cross has already softened beneath your feet. Stick around till the very end. Tap like, subscribe, and turn on notifications. Because some stories only reveal their meaning after the silence settles. I hadn't planned for the evening to feel this way. It started innocently enough. Neighbors drifting in after sunset, the heat still clinging to the air. Conversation moving lazily like smoke. But something had shifted long before anyone acknowledged it. Elias sat across from me, shoulders relaxed, gaze careful, too careful. He'd always been like that. Measured, deliberate. The kind of man who carried his restraint like a badge of honor. He listened more than he spoke, watched more than he acted. Beside him, Jonah was the opposite. Restless, sharp-smiled, too honest with his eyes. And me? I was tired of pretending I didn't notice. Loneliness does strange things when it lingers too long. It sharpens your senses, makes every glance feel louder, every pause heavier. My husband had been away for months. At first, I told myself I was fine, strong, independent. That lie unraveled quietly. It unraveled in the mornings when the bed felt too wide, in the evenings when silence echoed longer than it should, in the way my body woke before my thoughts did, aching for connection without knowing where to place it. And somewhere along the way, I stopped pretending I didn't know exactly what I wanted. Elias had lived next door for years, reliable, grounded, a presence that made everything feel steadier. Jonah, his temporary houseguest, was something else entirely. Youthful energy wrapped in confidence, always hovering just close enough to test boundaries without crossing them. Until tonight, the air between them and me felt charged. Not loud, not obvious, but unmistakable. I lifted my glass slowly, letting the cool surface ground me. Elias watched the motion without realizing he was doing it. Jonah didn't bother hiding his attention at all. Long day? I asked Elias casually. He nodded. Keeps my hands busy. I smiled at that. Let the silence stretch. Let the implication linger where neither of us named it. Jonah leaned back, arms crossed, amusement dancing in his eyes. Some nights do that. Elias shot him a warning glance. Too late. I stood, smoothing my dress, not for effect, I told myself, though I didn't fully believe it. The movement drew their attention anyway. It always did. I was thinking of opening something stronger, I said lightly. You're welcome to join me. Jonah didn't hesitate. Thought you'd never ask. Elias paused. That single second told me everything. Only if you're sure, he said. I met his gaze, held it. I am. Inside, the lights were low. Familiar space suddenly transformed by presence alone. I poured 3 drinks, listening to the quiet ritual of ice against glass. Jonah took a seat immediately, like he belonged there. Elias remained standing, torn between leaving and leaning in. I chose the space between them. Conversation drifted, stalled, restarted. But underneath it all, something unspoken grew louder. Jonah leaned closer, voice low. You always this bold? Only when I'm tired of waiting, I replied. Elias exhaled slowly. The sound was barely there, but I felt it. That was the moment. Not a touch, not a kiss. Just the realization that none of us were pretending anymore. And once that truth settles in a room, there's no returning to how things were. The silence after that felt deliberate, heavy, but not uncomfortable. Elias finally sat, setting his glass down untouched. His control was slipping, not in chaos, but in honesty. Jonah watched the exchange with a knowing calm, like someone who understood the rhythm of the room better than he let on. I shifted closer, not to either of them, but to the truth pressing between us. This doesn't have to mean anything, I said softly, but it does deserve clarity. Jonah smiled faintly. Funny. I was thinking the same. Elias looked at me then, really looked. Not guarded, not distant, just present. Whatever happens, he said quietly, I won't cross a line you don't open. Something about that undid me. I stood, offering my hand, not demanding, just inviting. Elias took it. The contact was brief, electric, then gone. Jonah rose too, instinctively, like the room had shifted gravity. No rush, no competition, just awareness. We moved closer, not colliding, not claiming, just sharing space, breath, heat. Time blurred. There were glances held too long, words left unfinished. The kind of closeness that doesn't need description because it lives in what's withheld. At some point, laughter broke through, soft, relieved. A release of tension, not an ending. Later, we sat in silence again. But this time, it was different. Warm. Settled. No one rushed to define it. Some moments don't ask for explanation. They ask to be remembered. Morning came gently, light filtering through curtains. The quiet hum of a world continuing as if nothing had changed, but everything had. Elias stirred beside me on the couch, a hand resting with familiar ease. Jonah stood by the window, coffee in hand, glancing back with a half-smile that held more than humor. Feel better? He asked. For now, I replied. And it was true. The ache that had followed me for months had softened, not vanished, but transformed. Less hunger, more awareness. Some desires don't disappear once they're acknowledged. They evolve. As they left, nothing was promised. Nothing was denied. Just a shared understanding that something real had been allowed to exist, even briefly. And sometimes, that's enough. Just a shared understanding that something real had been allowed to exist, even briefly. And sometimes, that's enough. But even after the door closed behind them, the room didn't empty. Their presence lingered, in the warmth left behind, in the glasses still resting where they'd been set down, in the quiet that felt fuller than before. I stood there for a long moment, listening to my own breathing, noticing how the silence no longer felt heavy. It felt settled. I realized then that not every connection is meant to last forever. Some arrive only to remind you of parts of yourself you thought had gone quiet. To wake something. To loosen a knot you didn't even know you were carrying. Later that night, lying awake, I replayed the smallest details, not what was said, but what wasn't. The pauses. The looks that held meaning without asking for permission. The strange comfort of knowing that something honest had passed between us without needing to be named or claimed. By morning, the world returned to its usual rhythm. Cars passing, sunlight finding its way in, life continuing as it always does. But I carried something new with me, not regret, not longing, just awareness. An understanding that desire doesn't always demand action. That closeness doesn't always need definition, and that sometimes the most powerful moments are the ones that end quietly, leaving you changed, without ever explaining how. To you, my beautiful viewers, if you ever offered someone something you secretly believed they'd never accept, what would you feel the moment they met your eyes and quietly said, yes? Tell me in the comments. I genuinely want to hear your thoughts. And if this story stirred something unspoken inside you, hit like, share it with someone who understands silence, and subscribe with the bell on. Because the next story might be the one that changes everything.